Hey everyone, it's John Cheehawk from Anti-Hero Brand Press, back again with another top 5 list. This one's going to be a top 10 list with 5 honorable mentions in it, and it is the top 10 worst comic book movies of all time. The list is actually a top 11, or top 12 if you think about it. Honorable mentions for me are the direct-to-video Man-Thing from the mid-2000s from Lionsgate. Not a bad movie overall, but I think they missed out on, the semblance of what Man-Thing is. And then with the new evolution of what they decided to make him for the movie, they completely missed out by focusing on the wrong characters for this movie. Howard the Duck would be number 2. I mean, Man-Thing and Howard the Duck are 2 of my favorite characters of all time. But it just doesn't seem like, even in the mid-'80s, when the Howard the Duck comic book had long since passed, there was no need for a Howard the Duck movie. The little vignettes and the little cameos in the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies were phenomenal. I enjoyed them very much. But as much as I like Howard the Duck as a cult classic, it was not necessary. Superman 3, this was the vehicle with Richard Pryor where he synthesized kryptonite that basically made Superman lethargic and uncaring. Very cheesy movie. X-Men 3, The Last Stand. Never liked the Wolverine, Jean Grey, Cyclops love triangle. Always felt, at least in the movies, it was very, very, very forced. Didn't like at the end how, he climbed towards her and then, ran her through with his claws. The addition of the Juggernaut in that vein was very, very cheesy. However, I do like how evil they made Magneto in that movie, because as soon as Mystique lost her powers, he had no more use for her, which shows what his motivations were. And then just some of the other cheesiness in the movie. Although the Danger Room scene at the very, very beginning of the movie was pretty cool. So that's why it gets an honorable mention, and it's not on the list itself. The last one for honorable mentions is Spider-Man 3. That's probably pretty self-explanatory. I shouldn't have to, play a GIF or a GIF of Peter Parker in a black suit doing a pelvic thrust in front of a cafe. So let's get onto the list, shall we? Number 10, the 1989 Tim Burton Batman. Now, I first saw this movie when I was 11 years old, and it was probably the coolest thing I'd ever seen up to that point. But then again, I was 11 years old. The movie theater was packed to the point where there were actually people sitting in the aisle, which would never happen now. As cool as it was back then, when I watch it now as an adult, it's very cheesy to see a grown man in an obviously rubber-molded bat suit running through a city holding Vicky Vale's hand. Some of the one-liners were a little bit over the top, and some of the fight scenes, they were choreographed very poorly. But that also probably had a lot to do with the limited mobility inside the batsuit, which of course they made fun of in Dark Knight, when he asks for a new suit and Lucius says, "You want to be able to turn your head." So there's an Easter egg for you if you never caught that one in Dark Knight. Number 9, Batman Returns. One of the main reasons this gets on the list is the same reason Batman gets on the list, and that's because he reveals his secret identity of Bruce Wayne to someone. In the first movie, Vicky Vale learns that Batman and Bruce Wayne are one and the same. In Batman Returns, Catwoman learns that Batman and Bruce Wayne are one and the same. The other thing that did it for me in this, when you look back at it, as much as I like Danny DeVito as the Penguin, I think a lot of the gags were much more comedic in terms of the Joker, or maybe if you brought Killer Croc in his working with the circus sideshow kind of thing. And then the fact that he had little penguins going to war with missiles and rockets strapped to their back, no doubt dying, and that doesn't seem like something that the Penguin would have a part in. But here we go to number 8, Avengers Age of Ultron. Too many one-liners. Everybody had to be funny. The final battle scene, which was the big killer for me, was the exact same battle scene as in the first Avengers movie, one hit kills all around. So there was no impact whatsoever, other than the people who they were trying to escape, and you get Quicksilver to die, but you don't really care about him anyways because he's only been in the movie for like an hour and a half at that point. The other thing that really did it in for me was you took Black Widow, who in Iron Man, who in Winter Soldier, and then in the first Avengers movie was this tough as nails, could kick pretty much anybody's ass weapon. And all of a sudden she turns into Team Mom. And, I don't think I can forgive Joss Whedon for sun's getting pretty low, big guy. That was brilliant in terms of its stupidity, making her the Team Mom, making her the only one who could calm the Hulk down, which didn't make sense because in the first Avengers movie, he's like, I'm always angry, so he controls it already. But let's keep going, shall we? Number 7, Fantastic Four, the 2005 vehicle with Jessica Alba and Chris Evans pre-Captain America. Just didn't do it for me. It was very, very cheesy. Felt kind of rushed, felt kind of cheap. And then when the second Fantastic Four came out, all of a sudden, Invisible Woman has blue eyes. Was that just a part of her mutation from the cosmic rays? Whatever. But Doctor Doom, who was played by Julian McMahon from Nip Tuck, could have been this great villain, and they didn't do it again, and they made him more smarmy than anything, than just like this egocentric, like, I'm gonna rule the world kind of thing. Number 6, Superman Returns. Didn't really like Kate Bosworth as Lois Lane. Didn't mind Brandon Routh as Superman. I felt that he did a pretty good homage to Christopher Reeve, which I think a lot of people did not like, and therefore let the studio have it. And they were like, why is he being Christopher Reeve? Nobody else should be Christopher Reeve. And then several years later, when Henry Cavill, takes on the mantle of Superman, everybody's like, why isn't he more like Christopher Reeve? There was just not enough action. The beats didn't resonate very well with this. However, I did like Parker Posey. I like her in pretty much anything. She's a really niche-y, kind of quirky actress. Like, she's not a great actress, but she's a lot of fun to watch. And then, of course, Kevin Spacey's Lex Luthor, I thought was like really good because he was equal parts like super intelligent and evil genius and just really smarmy, like swindling that old lady out of all of her money and basically telling the rest of the family to go and stick it afterwards. Like, that's Lex Luthor, like a different type of Lex Luthor, but still a good one. Which brings us to number 5, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Really sad that this one got made, just because it was so cheesy, but I think there was just the penchant for it, and they were like, the first two did really well. The third one did well enough that, we got to make a fourth one, and, having the weird reverse clone that really should have been Bizarro Superman, but whatever, you got John Cryer in it, you got the roided out, oiled up, bleach blonde Mark Singer lookalike kind of thing. So, I mean, it wasn't all bad, I guess. Number 4, Judge Dredd. Overall, the visuals in this movie and the attitude in this movie were not bad. The visuals, actually, I really enjoyed. I liked how they made Mega City 1, the ABC machine, the Mean Machine, all the weapons. Dredd's costume, I thought was phenomenal, but the one thing you don't do with Judge Dredd is he doesn't take his helmet off. That's enough to land that movie on this list. And then you just added Rob Schneider for some comic relief and the little buddy cop movie kind of thing. But you already kind of had that with Diane Lane as Judge Hershey. So I don't know. Number 3 shares a twofer spot. So this is actually like a top 14, I guess, or a top 12, I should say. The Dolph Lundgren Punisher vehicle. Just bad on so many levels, but cult movie bad. Like, you're waiting for this to show up at the Loft in Tucson on Mondo Mondays. The scene in the casino where he's shooting up the place, and he's actually making the noise while he's shooting the machine gun, and the fact that the skull only shows up on the edge, on the butt end of the knives. I don't know, man. That's pretty nigh on to horrible right there. But then just screwing up his backstory. He wasn't a Marine. He was a cop, which was what they were going to do when they sold the rights to ABC or whoever. He was going to be a cop who moonlighted as the Punisher, just killing people and stuff. And I'm really glad Netflix got a hold of it to make sure that that didn't happen. The sharing the number 3 spot, tie for number 3, is Blade Trinity. Oh man, not a horrible movie by any stretch of the imagination. The fight scenes were pretty good, although Jessica Biel and Ryan Reynolds' fight scenes looked very, very clunky. Neither one of them is athletic in that regard. I mean, Wesley Snipes has studied martial arts a majority of his life. If you want a great story about Blade Trinity, look up. I forget the name of the comedian who does the spot with Patton Oswalt, but look up Patton Oswalt Blade Trinity. He talks about all the messed up things that happened behind the scenes, how Wesley Snipes kind of just went crazy, was smoking weed to no end. Like when you pass by his trailer and the door opened, like pot smoke would just come out. Not judging, just saying that's what he said. And that Wesley was demanding that everybody called him Blade. Like that was his name. It wasn't Wesley Snipes. It wasn't Mr. Snipes. It wasn't Wesley. He was Blade when he was on set. Method actor, maybe? I mean, Kane Hodder does the same thing when he puts on the Jason hockey mask. He doesn't talk to anybody. He'll walk 4 or 5 miles around to get to the scene so he can just spring out at people. Little bit different, for Blade. Plus just all the triggers in with like the doctor also being a familiar and things like that was really goofy. Number 2, also tied with another movie, Barb Wire. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you about this movie other than it's a train wreck with boobs. I mean, that's essentially all it is. And it's not like the comic book was that much better. It was made during the whole bad girl phase of the early 90s. I mean, Pamela Anderson got a barbed wire armband tattooed on her because she didn't want to keep going back and forth for the makeup every day. So she just got it tattooed on her, which didn't make the movie any better or make it any more realistic. And, check out some of the jump cuts in this. It's great if you want to learn how not to shoot a movie or how to shoot a movie on a really low budget where like you can't get a double that looks somewhat like your star. Tied for number 2 has to be Catwoman. Same thing. Halle Berry, way over the top. I think Benjamin Bratt was in this movie. Like he's a pretty good actor. Like I don't know. She had said after the X-Men trilogy that she wanted a movie that was going to be hers and she could carry it. Well, not sure if it was Halle Berry. I do not think she's a very good actress, in spite of winning an Oscar. And just, I don't want to get into that argument. She's not a good actress. She's not good in action. Like Pamela Anderson, she, at least back then, she's nice to look at. Carry a franchise that's going to be something else because action is not your forte. So, only positive thing about that movie, the really uber sexy costume, I guess. Which brings, speaking of sexy costumes, brings us to number 1, Batman and Robin. And what can I say except for bat nipples, ass shots, and crotch shots while suiting up? Schumacher had the good sense not to cut in any nipples on Batgirl, which, 20 years from then, which is now, would be seen in very poor taste or sexist, and no crotch shots, boob shots, or ass shots on Alicia Silverstone. So, while we suffered for it then, at least Schumacher's not getting raked through the coals now, but he is still getting raked through the coals for making this, I'll say it, abortion of a Batman movie. The comedy stylings, the little buddy thing with Chris O'Donnell just didn't work. He wasn't bad as Robin and Dick Grayson, but maybe he should have been Nightwing, or maybe they should have just had him be really peripheral and not such a major character because it just kind of didn't work. Um, Alicia Silverstone was a very poor Batgirl, and making her Alfred's niece was just bad. George Clooney years ago took credit for the demise of the Batman franchise, and I don't think that's fair because there were so many things wrong with this movie. There were so many poor casting choices. The dialogue was extremely poor. The story was extremely poor. That you cannot just blame one person for it. So as much as Schwarzenegger chewed the scenery as Mr. Freeze, as much as maybe Alicia Silverstone sucked as Batgirl, as maybe George Clooney was half a foot too short to be Batman, you know, Schumacher's just as guilty, the casting director's just as guilty, the producers who made sure that certain elements got put into the movie are just as guilty. So that's my top 10 list of the worst comic book movies of all time. I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. And once again, I'm John Chihak from Antihero Brand Press. Check me out on Patreon at patreon.com/antiherobrand. I'll be posting videos and content up there as often as I can. And guess we'll see you at the movies.